Water is crucial to life on Earth. How it is distributed determines where plants and animals live from global to local scales. We can see this in the differences between broad-leaved, fast-growing plants in the tropics and small-leaved, slow-growing plants in the deserts. It is also apparent in the regional distribution of lungless terrestrial salamanders that breathe by keeping their skin moist. In the northeastern U.S., lungless salamanders can live in a variety of habitats, from the mountains of Shenandoah National Park to lowland areas such as Valley Forge National Historic Park. In the southwestern U.S., they are restricted to only a few mountainous places, such as the high elevation forests in Bandelier National Monument. How water is distributed spatially and temporally on Earth, how life is adapted to water availability and water stress in different places, and how the different phases of water are distributed geographically and seasonally provides a better sense of how important the amount and timing of water is to life. Knowing this can also help explain how those distributions might change in the future, how disturbances like drought and fire may unfold, and how plants, animals, and humans may respond. But how is it possible to track water in all of its forms everywhere in parks? One way is to consider a model called water balance. Water balance is essentially a bank account for water, where the water that comes into a place is balanced by the water leaving. It tells us how much water enters or leaves a place, when that water does so, and what form that water is in, revealing how much is available for plants and animals. Water balance uses temperature and precipitation measurements from weather stations or future projections from climate models to estimate how water is distributed into different pools once it falls to the ground. This is a simplified view of a water balance model. On the right-hand side of this figure is precipitation as either rain or snow, depending on the temperature. Once this precipitation reaches the ground, it becomes one of three pools. It can stay there, stored as snow or soil moisture, flow to streams, lakes, and wetlands, or it can return to the atmosphere by evaporation or transpiration. Dividing water into these different pools helps us understand why plants and animals live where they do. If precipitation falls as snow, it is stored and released later in the year. Snow also provides habitat for animals such as voles, snowy owls, ptarmigan, and snowshoe hares. If precipitation falls as rain, it can more immediately become groundwater or flow to lakes and streams as runoff to become surface water. The amount of water that runs off depends on how much precipitation falls and how much water the soil can hold. Fish and other aquatic life are dependent on this surface water to survive. Temperature and sunshine determine how fast plants use water or transpire and how quickly water evaporates from the soil surface. If we know how much water comes into soil from rain and snowmelt, and how much water leaves as runoff and evapotranspiration, we can know how much water is stored in soil at any time. Evaporation rates combined with the topography of an area affect how long water is held in the soil. For instance, south-facing slopes receive more sunshine and dry out sooner than north-facing slopes, while low-lying and flat areas typically have deeper soil than steep areas and can therefore hold more water. These differences in water storage affect what types of vegetation can grow where, and thus determine which animals can survive in that habitat. Beyond plants and animals, water can also tell us when and where wildfires burn, and how humans use landscapes as cities, farms, ranches, and forests. The part of water balance that isn't shown in this figure is deficit. Deficit is how much water plants need that they cannot get, like an overdrawn bank account. It is also an indicator of drought. When deficit increases beyond what is usual for an ecosystem, it becomes more difficult for plants and animals to survive. If we needed to keep track of all of these factors individually, it would be almost impossible to know how water is entering and leaving an environment. Fortunately, all of these considerations are calculated in the water balance model, starting with just temperature and precipitation. So, why does all of this information matter? What will it do to help park managers understand how changes in temperature and precipitation will impact nature locally? Climate change will increase temperatures, causing some precipitation that historically fell as snow to fall as rain. With higher temperature, rates of evapotranspiration increase, which will dry out soil sooner, making dry seasons longer and the area more susceptible to wildfire. Lower soil moisture requires more precipitation before runoff occurs, which is needed to supply water to streams and lakes, impacting life dependent on surface water. These cascading effects demonstrate how changes in how much, in what form, and when water is available can affect ecosystems. Understanding how water moves through an ecosystem helps us understand what plants and animals experience today and what they will face in the future as climate changes. When we think about plant and animal needs from the perspective of water, we can determine how they may be affected by changes in water availability caused by climate change. By knowing when and how much water they require at different stages of their life cycles, we can anticipate if their water needs will be satisfied in the future. To put it simply, water balance is often a better predictor of nature's response to climate than temperature and precipitation alone. By simplifying the complexities of climate using a water balance model, we can understand why tropical plants have big leaves, while desert plants have small leaves, and why salamanders live where they do. The types of plants that live in the tropics have more access to water, and because water is readily available, they compete for sunlight, causing them to grow faster and have bigger leaves. On the other hand, desert plants conserve the little water they have. They keep their leaves small to prevent water loss and don't grow as quickly, but they are resistant to water stress. Lungless salamanders in the northeastern U.S. are broadly distributed because of the amount of water in various ecosystems, whereas the southwestern U.S. is dry, so those salamanders can live in only a few distinct high elevation places. How and where plants and animals live depends on the local climate, but the local climate is modified by site characteristics like soil type and slope direction, which is accounted for in the water balance model. Recognizing how the local climate affected plants and animals in the past will make it easier to predict what might happen as the climate changes. With improved understanding of how plants and animals respond to changes in water balance, we are more likely to be able to protect the plants, animals, and landscapes we all care so much about.